All right, back here on talking Oregon Ducks on the Voice of College Football Network. Owen, big one to get to. We are previewing Oregon at Penn State this Saturday, 4:30 p.m. on NBC. The Ducks are headed to the whiteout. I don't know if you saw the mummy shoes that got released, but what,
Oh
what kind of
yeah.
uniform combo are you hoping to see this weekend for the Ducks?
I do wonder if they'd be like, hey, let's go into the whiteout and wear all white. I think the shoes look great. As somebody who just loves to see it, I would love to see it go in and wear green.
No.
I'd be curious if they'd break out those Michigan State uniforms. I don't know if that would clash too much with the Penn State. I think usually wears white, blue, white.
Yeah, yeah,
In,
they'll be
in
in their
those
white, blue,
games.
white.
I think green could be cool. We haven't seen those away whites yet this season though, and I think in the whiteout those could look phenomenal.
Yeah, if they brought out the all white, we haven't seen they don't have a white helmet in the rotation right now besides the marble one they
No,
wore for
no,
these
the
these
chrome
shoe
domes
dog
is where I
uniforms.
would
But
think
I wouldn't see it. I wouldn't be surprised to see one come out if they had to. But I wouldn't mind seeing that one with the chrome domes.
something like
But
Michigan
Owen,
last year.
starting off here, Penn State. Where are you feeling as we head towards this game? Oregon is going to be a slight underdog in this one, but these are two of the best teams in the country. This looks like to be about a 50-50 matchup. We'll get into it more, but Owen, before we really dive into it, I just want to get a quick hear from you. Do you think Oregon really has a chance to go into Penn State and win this game?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this team not only is talented enough to go do it, but it feels like it's a group that has enough experience to go in and win in a place like Penn State. Of course, it's always going to be difficult to go in there, but it feels like every year under Dan Lanning, they've developed more of a thick skin for going into a place like Michigan or a place like Husky Stadium and really looking at, hey, like we know who we are, we understand, and he's developed as a coach. All these guys on the staff have developed an understanding how to give their guys confidence when they go into a really tough away environment. I think maybe in year one, if he had this team, I wouldn't have been quite as confident because I say, hey, we don't know how he really looks in those environments. But I think I have the confidence now to say I believe in Dan Lanning to go into an environment like Penn State and fire his team up and really equip them to perform.
Yeah, he hasn't necessarily done it on the road on those biggest stages yet. I think the biggest road win under Lanning so far at this point would probably be that Michigan win
Yeah.
from last year.
They've kept it close at Washington. Like they did not fall apart at Washington. They've
not at
gone
all. That
to places like Indianapolis where it was a ton of Penn State fans and looked very solid.
No, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Is that he has experience in these bowl games and these other big games. His very first game of his career, he had to go on, basically on the road and go play at Georgia in Atlanta in a neutral site game in Atlanta, but one that the Ducks got dominated in. But he's kind of been put into these situations that I feel like there will be something coming this week in terms of that we'll see on the like Ducks versus them of like some sort of motivational thing, that like the way that they had the thumbs down at Michigan last year with the Gladiator hype up video. They will have something planned in order to kind of get this team turned up against Penn State. As we look at both of these teams right now, what stands out to you when you just looking at the way they've played across these first 3 weeks? Both these teams relatively untested so far.
Yeah.
Penn State has played Nevada, FIU, and Villanova. Blew out all of those teams, but those three teams all below Oregon's opponents in some of these various rating systems. ESPN actually has Penn State's strength of schedule right now dead last in the country. Oregon is 119th out of those 136 teams, so it's not a huge difference there. But neither of these teams really tested so far at this point. How do you think that plays into this game here this weekend?
I mean, I think what it tells you is that neither of these teams has really done what it can yet. We've done a lot talking about, hey, how much has Will Stein opened up the bag? And it feels like there has been a decent amount of variety in what they've done and how they've used players like Deerhill, what they've done with guys like Malik Benson, and even opening up the sheet to hey, let's get Luke Moga on the field. Let's have Dante and him both together in that play where they ran the sweep.
Yeah.
But really neither of these teams has been tested and had to perform under pressure yet. We've talked and we will talk about, hey, what has Dante Moore looked like under pressure? What has Drew Aller looked like when the rubber hits the road? But like the truth is as much as those guys have been in like pressure situations, none of them have gone on the road into an environment that's really difficult. None of them have had to go lead a drive to win the game yet. And, Dante will have to go on the road in this game, and he will potentially have to lead a drive to win the game. Drew Aller will be at home, but he will have to do the same. That's where I sit, is that we really don't know anything about how these teams will perform when the world's against them. And that's why this is so exciting.
Exactly, Doug. Like you said, so exciting just because we have so much to learn this weekend. As we get into it, what kind of matchups on each side of the ball are kind of standing out to you as things that are going to likely dictate how this game is going to go, and where those areas that the Ducks really need to find success in at Penn State to be able to get this done?
Well, I spent this whole this past week researching like running back duels in college football for a story that's going to come out of the Emerald on D.R. Hill and Jordan Davison. And that meant a lot of looking at what makes Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton really good. And the answer is that they're really talented and that they play really well off each other. I was talking to somebody earlier today. I was just like, the thing that's going to make this game tough for the Ducks is the fact that so much of their rushing defense is based on the fact that they can wear guys down, that Amari Washington can hit you and hit you again. And then you're going to get hit by Mateo when there's four guys hitting one guy, like Anthony Hankerson or whoever's toting the rock for Northwestern. And that's not exactly how it's going to look in this game, because you have two guys who are really strong and who you can rotate out and say, hey, you got hit, you can sit, that's okay. We have another guy who's just as good as you. And that's going to be really challenging for Oregon, I think, because it means that you're going to need 100% effort on every down in order to stop these guys, which, the run defense has looked shaky these first three games. They've recovered, like we talked about, and that was my exclamation point. But the truth is, it wasn't always at 100%, and they will need that 100% on every down in this game. That's the biggest thing for me. Is if they can't stop those two guys, there's just no chance. If Penn State can get into second and short, third and short on every down, you don't get a chance to get Mateo and Tatum running at Drew Aller. You don't get
Allen and Singleton are right where I go to. And that was the first thing I thought about with this matchup. So thinking back to last year's Big Ten Championship game, a year ago, each of them they go for over 100 yards in that game. Yep. Penn State puts up nearly 300 total yards on the ground on nearly 9 yards per carry. Just ridiculous efficiency clips that they were putting up on the Ducks late in that season. And we saw Oregon really become susceptible to some of those explosive runs late in the year last year. I asked Tatum Tuioti about it after the game. Does it feel like there's a bit of a revenge factor for the defense and the defensive line specifically, because this was a team and two players specifically at running back that really did dice them up last year? And he said, yeah, they're definitely going to be, it was a big thing for them ahead of that Oregon State game to improve on the run defense. And as they head to Penn State, that's certainly a focus for them and something you want to do, because you stop these guys, and that's how that's how stopping this team on offense really begins. It's stopping those two, because like you said, when you have two guys in Singleton and Allen who can rotate in and out, you all can always keep them fresh, and they just accentuate each other so much better, because Kaytron Allen is going to run harder when he's in there because he's been getting a blow from Nick Singleton, who's going to run harder when he's in there because he's been getting some rest while Allen's out there. They're able to rotate those guys in throughout the game, and in a way that the Oregon does with their 6 or 7 guys, just to keep everyone fresh. And the more you can do that, the better you're going to be. But that's exactly the first thing I'm thinking about with this game, because Oregon's run defense did improve against Oregon State. It looked a lot better at the line of scrimmage. It looked a lot better at the second level with your safeties and your linebackers. We talked about Bryce Betcher's game that he had on Saturday. But Oregon State is a team that has not run the ball successfully this season. Their game script really got out of hand in that second half. It was like 5 or 6 3 and outs in a row for them, where they couldn't get anything going on those early downs, and then Malik Murphy had to drop back and try to pass against this Oregon pass rush, against this Oregon secondary, and that didn't go well for him on those second and third and longs. But Oregon State, their first 3 games of the season, they're 2.6 yards per carry, and then against Oregon, they're 2.6 yards per carry. This is a team that ran for 8 total yards against Texas Tech on less than half a yard per carry. So you feel like you did a lot better against Oregon State, but Oregon State is a team that has really, really struggled to run the ball, and really struggled to run the ball on early downs this year, which has gotten their offense in situations that have been a bit precarious for them. But you feel like there was an improvement, but it's not going to be that against Oregon State because this Penn State offensive line, these Penn State running backs, these Penn State tight ends, blocking, everything is going to be just another level than what you faced so far this season.
Yeah, and that's where I start going at and thinking, hey, maybe Amari Washington does decide this game because it depends on whether he can eat a double team. Because he can do it against Oregon State, but can he do it against this Penn State offensive line? Or is it going to be enough? Can they have one of their guys handle him and then have a guy free to go deal with Mateo if he starts going off, or go deal with a guy like Bear or Tina Gray? And that's I think where I landed on this because it was the middle where the Ducks got gashed a couple times in this game, and you have guys on the outside who feel like they can fly around and make tackles, but if they can keep going up the middle and you still have to account for the outside, that's where it starts worrying me. I think Amari Washington, especially early in this one, if they're able to establish that ability to go up the middle, it worries me that it could get out of hand for the Ducks.
Yeah, I think Amari Washington's going to need to have some of the explosive, game-changing plays that he can make where, he's just so much faster than these guards. He can cross their face and slide into the backfield and at least, disrupt somebody and make them make a cut into another person for a tackle for loss. I think it's going to be a big game for him. Like you said, Bear Alexander, Tion Gray, Terrence Green, all these guys on the inside, they are going to have to, I don't want to get into that ESPN step-up culture of sports talk, but these are guys that do have to step up for the Ducks to succeed in this game and kind of raise their games to that next level and what we think they can do because you have some really big bodies on the inside there. And then let Tatum Tuioti, who has been, he's got tagged 5 tackles for loss already this season. Let him be able to rally to the football. Let Mateo Uiagalelei scrape down the line and impact plays. Let Bryce Betcher, he said when he was asked about what made him able to do, have the game he did against the run on Saturday, he said it was because the defensive line is giving him those opportunities and opening up those holes for him to attack downhill. So it starts with the defense up front, but it's going to take a game from all of those guys to get to where they want to against Penn State and shut down this rushing attack.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of if we're still talking about the defensive line, I wonder, once you stop that rush, it makes you wonder how many times Mateo really does get to run at the tackle. How many times does Tatum really get to say, hey, let me go to work on this guy because Drew Aller's in third and long and he has to take 3 seconds to throw the ball. And Drew Aller's a guy who's made mistakes. He made them in the Big Ten championship game against the Ducks last year. He threw the game-sealing interception when he's trying to make a play. He's a guy who will go try to play hero ball and will not be perfect when he does it. But the Ducks have to put him in those situations. How many chances do you really think they do get to go make those plays?
I think they'll get a few for sure, but you got to be able to stop that run on first down and be able to get into those situations. Penn State has gotten better each game at shortening their average distance to go on those third downs, but Aller hasn't necessarily done a really great job passing the ball on third downs. He's thrown the ball, 19 or 18 times 18 times on third down. He's completed half of those passes and only picked up a first down 4 of those times. So it's been a bit of a struggle when he has been behind the sticks. Penn State's O-line is good. They bring, guys like Nolan Rucci, Drew Shelton, they played last year. And now I can't remember it. One of them earned playing time last year. One of them started last year. Okay. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember which one, but these are guys who have, allowed pressures this season. 9 combined from them. Aller's been under a bit of pressure this season. He's a guy who does take these sacks at times, and that pressure can affect him. We've seen his completion rate drop, and especially when he's been blitzed this year, it's dropped under 60%. He's just, not really able to find that accuracy when he's under pressure, sailing throws at times, underthrowing receivers at times, because he just can feel rushed in his mechanics. Because he is such a big guy, he's a big guy with a big arm, but when you speed up those mechanics, it can really lead to the accuracy can get very it can vary greatly at that point.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like we said, he's a guy who can make mistakes, and he came back to college to kind of refine that. This is a game for Drew Aller where he's really trying to prove that those mistakes are something that he's put in his past, and that he's able to be the guy under pressure. And I'm going to skip a little bit here, but we can talk about what Drew Aller and Dante Moore are going to look like in these pressure situations. This is going to be some of the biggest football. I mean, this is going to be the biggest football Dante Moore's ever played. It's going to be some of the biggest football Drew Aller, who did make the run in the college football playoff last year, has ever played. But this is a game that's going to define his season. If they drop this one, suddenly all their chips are in the Ohio State basket, and you have to beat Ohio State, and that's not something James Franklin and Drew Aller have really succeeded at either. We've talked about how strong Dante has been. in these, pseudo pressure situations. End of half, Ducks are 4-4 in those situations at the end of a half, but we really haven't seen Dante get under pressure. We haven't seen him go in these situations where Drew Aller has made mistakes yet. We saw him throw the pick in the Northwestern game, but it felt like this past week against Oregon State was the one where he made the most mistakes in terms of overthrowing a guy, but also
he was as I was watching it back from Dante on Saturday, he was just aggressive in that game throughout it, and the more I watched things back, the less I got worried about some of those misses. Yeah, he could have put more air under the ball to Malik or more air under the ball to DeCorian Moore, but his average depth of target was his highest as a Duck so far this year. He was genuinely pushing the ball downfield and able to rack up some big completions in that game. So I'm less concerned than I was after that game, directly after that game.
And the part that I really liked out of that is how well he reacted. I thought was the big difference between him and Malik Murphy is that he reacted really well, and he was able to come back and still continue to push the ball and be accurate when pushing the ball and not necessarily try to make a big play that wasn't there, but he was able to overcome that throw on the first drive to Malik that went over his head and throw the back shoulder ball to DeCorian. And that is what gives me confidence to be able to say, hey, he's able to go into an environment like Penn State where you're going to be under pressure against a pass rush that has a guy like Danny Denise-Sutton, we assume. And still be successful because he's able to react so well, even if he misses a guy, even if if he throws a pick, I believe he's able to come back from that because of what he's shown in these first 3 games.
I think this quarterback position is one of the areas that Oregon has its biggest advantage in. Not necessarily that I don't think Aller can be that guy. We see him have we know he has a big arm. We know he has won games for this team in the past with that arm at times, but I think Oregon has a definitive advantage in the quarterback position so far. Dante Moore early on has looked like a top 3 to 5 candidate for the Heisman Trophy. Has looked like one of the best quarterbacks potentially one of the best quarterbacks in next year's NFL draft. Has basically executed everything pretty flawlessly so far this year. The one pick is a situation where it's 2nd and 3. He tries to push the ball downfield into the wind. Probably shouldn't have tried to do that, but it's not that linebacker probably doesn't have a chance to get to that ball from Northwestern if they're not throwing into the wind. But I think the way Moore has been playing, really all season, but especially since opening things up in that Oklahoma State game, he is trusted like Bo Nix was, even more so than Dylan Gabriel by Will Stein, and you can see that with some of the stuff they ask him to do in this offense. He has a lot of checks at the line of scrimmage. He can get to some of these backside reads. It's something Malik Benson talked about, just being when you're out there, you have to always be aware, even if you're on the backside of a play, because Dante has an arm that can, that throw to Malik Benson on the sideline was pretty ridiculous on Saturday. Just the fact that it was going from the far hash all the way across the sideline, 30 yards downfield. Benson goes up and makes a great play, but it's pretty incredible ball placement by Dante Moore. Aller's been solid so far this year, throwing around 200 yards a game, 4 touchdowns and a pick for him on the year. But it's about a 56% completion percentage over the last 2 weeks. The yards per attempt is down around 6.5. Both of those numbers well below where you'd expect, and that's that was the game against FIU and a game against Villanova. These are not top tier pass defenses that Drew Aller is playing. Like you said, we saw last year in that Big Ten championship, some mistakes by him really be difference-making plays in that game. He threw a pick from Penn State was backed up on their own goal line. He throws a pick early in that game. Oregon to Dante Manning, who brings it back to the 1 yard line. Oregon punched it in one play later to go up 28-10, and kind of really feel like they were pulling away in that game. And then late in it, he throws a deep ball down the sideline. Nico Reed makes a great play and picks it to seal that game, basically. But I think that can be an advantage that Oregon can or an area that Oregon can take advantage of, is what the better play that they have at quarterback. And if they can want to get Aller to, if a guy like Jerry Mixon can bait Aller into one of those throws over the middle that he can intercept, or if Dylan Thieneman can make a play downfield, or if you have a debut, Brandon Finney, whoever, if Aller can turn the ball over, I think that can be game changing for this team. Yeah,
I mean, and that obviously applies to Dante Moore too. You got to be careful with that aggressiveness that he's displayed in these first 2 games, that you don't let him get overconfident, because this is a situation where he goes and you say, hey, this is the biggest game you've ever played, man. Let's make sure we keep our head on straight. not that he's not going to do that, but he's become more aggressive, more confident. And it feels like a guy like Will Stein and Dan Lanning are really good at tempering that and managing what he's able to go do with the ball, but also kind of letting that arm rip because, in reality, that arm is what's going to win Oregon this game.
Yeah, I think Dante is going to have to make some plays. Like we saw him against Northwestern, where he's backed up 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, and you got to drop back and be able to make some of those passes. I think a lot of this game could come down to which quarterback, executes in those scenarios. And I think the Ducks have an advantage there, but, at the same time, you got to protect Dante. Saw more pressures in that Oregon State game than he'd seen throughout the rest. I think more than any other individual game, not throughout the rest of the season combined, but Alex Harkey gave up his first sack of the season. The tackles were solid, but, you got a lot of high-level edge rushers at Penn State. Obviously, we know about Dennis Sutton. He was out of practice after sustaining an injury late in that Villanova game. But, if he comes back, he's a guy that has kind of been pegged as that next Abdul Carter, Micah Parsons, whoever coming off the edge for Penn State. And then 2 other guys, Chaz Coleman and Zariah Fisher, 1st and 3rd in pressure rate among Power 4 edge rushers and 1st and 8th in pass rush win rate off the edge among Power 4 edge rushers. So these are guys that they're coming they're rotating through off the edge, but they have guys who can get to the quarterback, and potentially put pressure on Dante Moore, force him into turnovers. So Oregon has to make sure, they're protecting him, getting those blitz pickups by guys like Jaden Lamar and Jordan Davison and chipping them with tight ends, because these guys are going to come after Dante in a way you haven't seen throughout the rest of the season so far.
Yeah, I'm saying we can get a little bit into these running backs that we talked about a little bit earlier, because that's going to be what gets Drew Aller into those situations where he's going to be able to go make a play. The only time we've seen Dan Lanning and James Franklin face off with these two schools was the Big Ten championship last year. Obviously, Oregon took that one, but both schools were really potent offensively, and a lot of that was because of what Katron Allen and Nick Singleton were able to do. Allen, I think, has been the guy who's been a little bit more explosive this year. They've been splitting carries. There was a great piece in the New York Times by Brian Hamilton. Go read it. Just about these kids' relationship and how they've been guys who understood, how you can benefit by having a guy who can split carries with, and they really understand how that's their strength. These guys are both guys who can pop runs, and that killed Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and the Ducks were able to go overcome it with some great performances in the way they're able to lock down Tyler Ward a little bit. What do these guys really look like in this game? Why are they so great?
Both of them are just really good running backs. They're both guys who can break off explosive plays. They're guys who can survive through contact at their line of scrimmage. If you had to rank pound for pound running backs in college football, I don't think you get past 10 before you get to both of these guys. And they're both NFL level running backs. It's just not something you see from every single group. Like you said, Allen has been the more explosive guy, over 8 yards per carry, but Nicholas Singleton's gotten a little bit more of the work. They're going to split things up, but both of them are going to come after you. And they're guys who, when you get to the outside, they can break one and kind of hit that next gear of speed and get into the secondary. And they're also good at, navigating those lanes up front. Penn State's a good rushing team. They have been for years under James Franklin. We've seen running backs like Saquon Barkley come out of there in the past. These guys aren't Saquon, but you put them together and it's not far off.
Yeah, and like it's interesting because in doing a lot of that research for the story, it's like you look at these guys and it's not like one of them is a real specialist. It doesn't feel quite like a thing like Hill and Davison or like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, where one of them is really the bruiser and one of them is the lightning guy. But I think that honestly makes it a little bit more dangerous in terms of game planning for him, just because you
exactly
can't say, hey, when Allen's in the game, we got to look at the outside. We got to be worried about outside zone. We can really load up when Singleton's in the game and bring a guy up in the A gap. Like, I think that's something that Oregon really has to account for. I'm curious. I don't know how much you know about how much are these two guys in the game together. Like that steps a little bit away from what Oregon does or what the Lions do with those two guys. I think the danger with these guys is more just in the fact that in the fourth quarter they're both going to be fresh.
Exactly. They're going to continue to rotate them throughout the game and have those fresh legs out there. That the fresher they're going to be, the more likely they are to be able to rip off those 5-yard carries on first down and be able to set things up easier for Drew Aller. His offense is one that did take a lot of overhaul during the offseason, brought in some pretty big name transfer receivers, guys like Hiron Hudson, Trevor Pena, transfer from USC and Syracuse. Both have been Good for this team so far this year. This is because last year this team really lacked, a threat at receiver. They had Tyler Warren, the best tight end in the country last season, but they didn't have a guy who could really stretch defenses. And a guy like Kyron Hudson has been able to unlock that. They haven't necessarily done it, to the highest degree this season, but in theory, he's a guy that can do that. Trevor Pena has been really good in the slot. And then, they have a guy in Luke Reynolds who has been a solid third option there in that passing game as their tight end. Not going to be Tyler Warren, but as far as tight ends go in college football, one of the better ones that you're going to encounter. So this team does have weapons that they can use to attack Oregon. And this is something that we've been talking about all season, but Oregon is a young group in the secondary. We've seen at times communication issues be a thing for them in that Oregon State game. Jaden Kennedy kind of got lost on one that Oregon State was able to get down to about like the 1 yard line or so. We've seen miscommunication at other times this season. So that's going to be the thing that I'm really looking for Oregon on the back end is, can they communicate? Can they have, can Dylan Thieneman be that guy that solidifies everybody's rotations and assignments on the back end of that defense? Because last year that really was an issue against Penn State. Drew Aller hits at the 22-yard touchdown pretty early in that one to one of the running backs out of the backfield because of some communication issues, and then he hits another touchdown down the seams for over 20 yards because more communication issues on the backside. You can't have those in this game because those are, if you have communication issues, you have some big game-changing touchdown. It can really turn things around and put you in a hole that's going to make it harder to climb out of.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to get all our questions answered this Saturday. I'm sure we're not going to have any concerns after the game, and we'll understand everything that these two teams are about.